Hello, my name is Ashley. I'm with the Clem Public Library, and I am here with today's webinar. It's Healthy Heart, Healthy You. We have teamed up with Purdue Extension, and our guest speaker today is Lori Bouslog. She is a Purdue Extension health educator, and she will be talking about different recipes, how to make the food that we eat healthier for our heart, the exercise that we can get, and some tips of the trade to keep our bodies healthy. This webinar will be recorded and put onto our Patron Academy. There will be a survey at the end to share some information back with Purdue Extension on how you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to Lori. Thanks.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Lori Bouslog. I am the Health and Human Sciences Extension Educator in Vermilion County, and I am very pleased to share with you a program that when Ashley and I started talking about programs and what might be a good fit for outreach programs for the library, we decided that a heart health program might be something that would be of interest to folks. So welcome to Healthy Heart, Healthy You. I'm really glad that you were able to join us today. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I do have some resources that I'll share at the end. I also have an evaluation at the end, just so that you can kind of provide feedback to me on what was useful and maybe what you'd like to have some additional information about as well. So our objectives for today's program are, we're going to learn about heart health facts. We are going to understand more the risk factors for heart disease. We'll look at the normal ranges for blood pressure and what that means. We're going to talk about cholesterol as well. And then I have a few strategies to share with you so that you too can have a healthy heart. So I wanted to be sure to include a few pieces of information, just some heart facts. We're going to talk about Hoosiers in general, and then our next slide will actually focus on Vermilion County. So we know that 35% of Hoosier adults report having high blood pressure. Nearly 40% of Hoosiers report they have high cholesterol. We have about 26% of our population who are smokers. 66% are either overweight or obese. And 54% report that they do not meet the physical activity guidelines that have been established. So when I looked for heart health facts for Vermilion County, the most recent facts I could find are that there has been recently a 12.2% increase in heart disease hospitalizations. That means that for every 10,000 people in the county, 122.4 individuals have been hospitalized for some type of heart disease related situation. We know that we have seen an increase in heart disease deaths in Vermilion County, which equates to, and I understand that we do not have 100,000 people who live in the county, but that's the way the data has been provided to us. So per 100,000, that number would be 298.9. If you divide that by 10, it would be 29.9 per 10,000 people. And then when we look at hospitalizations due to stroke, we've seen an increase of 3%. And that means, when you look at roll numbers, 17 individuals per 10,000. And I found that information at the indianaindicators.org website. So what is heart disease? Oftentimes it's called coronary heart disease, and it involves several conditions that impact the heart and the blood vessels. When we talk about cardiovascular disease, that generally refers to conditions that involve narrowed or blocked blood vessels. The most common cause of heart disease is atherosclerosis, or blocked arteries. And this develops when plaque builds up on the walls of arteries, causing them to become blocked. We know that narrowing of the arteries makes it more difficult for blood to flow. The graphic on this slide is a graphic of a healthy heart. And so when we talk about different heart conditions, we know that heart attacks occur when blood flow to part of the heart is blocked by a blood clot. We know that stroke happens when a blood vessel that feeds the brain gets blocked, and that's usually from a blood clot. And we know that when the heart isn't pumping blood as well as it should, that equals heart failure. So I wanted to share with you a few risk factors for heart disease. And we know that some risk factors we can't do anything about. Those are the ones that maybe that family history or genetics, those are all listed on the right-hand side of the screen. So the family history or genetics, we can't predetermine what genes, that we can only take the good genes, right? We get the good and the not so good ones from our parents, okay? Our age is not something that we can control. Every year we roll another number onto that piece of our lives, okay? We cannot control our race or ethnicity, nor can we control our gender or our sex. But the things that we can control are our high blood pressure, our high cholesterol. We can control our weight. It's difficult to do, I understand that. We can control our eating behaviors. We choose what we decide to eat. No one else makes that decision for us. We can control our inactivity, our lack of physical activity. We can control whether we choose to smoke or not. We can, believe it or not, control our diabetes. We can control our stress, and we can control our alcohol consumption. So think about this slide, and you'll be able to relate back to this slide once we move through the tips that I've selected to share with you today. So let's talk just briefly about blood pressure. Blood pressure is the force of blood flow in your blood vessels, okay? When we have high blood pressure, that means that could lead to heart disease and kidney failure. The greater the blood pressure, meaning the higher the numbers, the higher the risk. High blood pressure is also known as the silent killer, because generally there are no symptoms to warn us when something is wrong. So you can see that when we have a hypertensive crisis, that means that you should consult your physician, your care provider immediately, and or get yourself to the ER. When your systolic pressure, that's the upper number, when it's higher than 180, and or your diastolic pressure, the lower number, is higher than 120, that is a hypertensive crisis. When your blood pressure is 140 or higher, or for your systolic pressure, or 90 or higher for your diastolic number, then that means you have hypertension stage 2. Stage 1 hypertension or high blood pressure, your numbers are 130 to 139 over 80 to 89. You can see the elevated numbers are 120 to 129 and less than 80 on the lower number. And a normal blood pressure, which is what we should all be striving for, that number should be less than 120, and the low on the upper number, and the lower number should be less than 80. So This information is from the American Heart Association. Every once in a while, you'll see numbers that vary a bit from these numbers that I have chosen to share here. I think the most important thing to remember as we go through all of this information is that none of what I say today replaces what your primary care provider tells you. So if your primary care provider says, I want your blood pressure to be in this range, that's what you go with. You don't say, oh, I attended a class and she recommended this and such, because care providers do have certain numbers that they want their patients to stay within, and this information does not replace any of that. Okay. All right. So let's talk about cholesterol for just a minute. Okay. We know that cholesterol is something that our bodies make. It's actually a soft, waxy substance, and it's carried through the body, through our arteries by the lipoproteins. Okay. When we think about fats, okay, we can also call those lipids, and those circulate in the blood and make what we call cholesterol. There are three main types of lipids. HDL is the high density lipoprotein, and that's what we call the good cholesterol. It removes cholesterol from the body, preventing buildup in the arteries. The LDL, or the low density lipoprotein, is what is commonly referred to as the bad cholesterol, because that's the LDL carries harmful cholesterol in the blood, which can lead to blocked arteries. Our triglycerides are a type of fat that is found in your blood. When you eat, your body converts any calories it doesn't need right away or to use right away into triglycerides. So let me back up just for a minute and share with you some kind of goals or parameters as far as numbers for each of these different types of lipids. So HDL, the higher the number, the lower the risk. So for women, the goal is 50, a number of 50. For men, it's a number of 40. Okay. The LDL, the higher the number, the greater the risk. So if your LDL is high, that means you have a higher risk. You want that to be less than or equal to 100. And for your triglycerides, you want that to be less than or equal to 150. So we want our total cholesterol. The goal is that would be less than 80. And total cholesterol is actually a composition of, it's an equation of our HDL and our LDL and 20% of the triglycerides. That's how that total cholesterol number is reached. And we all know, or it's the only way to determine what your cholesterol numbers are is through a blood test. And that's how those numbers can be monitored also. Okay. It's not uncommon for folks to be on a medication prescribed by their healthcare provider to help control their cholesterol. I know I am on one. I tried for a long time to control my cholesterol with diet. And I have actually experienced times in my life when, more than 10 years ago, when mine increased dramatically. And so tried as I did, I just was not able to control mine with diet. So my care provider has added put me on a prescription to help control that. So let's talk about some suggestions for a healthy heart. What can you do? So moving more is the very first thing that is mentioned. And I don't know about you, but I, especially with this weather we've been having lately, I don't get the amount of physical activity that is included in this slide, okay? And I'm going to guess that you may not either. But if you do, yay, good for you. That is awesome. But aim for at least 2.5 hours of physical activity every week. Quite honestly, that equates to 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And we're talking moderate intensity physical activity. We're not talking vigorous activity, okay? You should also include muscle strengthening exercises at least 2 days a week. And if you find it hard to dedicate 30 solid minutes of time, try chunks of time, okay? That may mean stretch breaks, especially if you're working full time or you have other commitments that don't allow you to, or some kind of a barrier that doesn't allow you to take on 30 full minutes in one chunk. So try chunks of time. And remember that some physical activity is better than none. What kinds of physical activities do you enjoy? Name some. What are some that you can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat? Oh, there's things in the chat. Walking, hikes, okay. Good. Keeping up with a toddler, that's a big one. So maybe if mobility is a concern, think about chair exercises. Those count. Okay, you're doing some kind of activity to help you. It might be gardening in the summer, maybe mowing, swimming. I know that when the high school had this allowed public access to the pool, that there were a lot of folks who took advantage of that. Bicycling, bowling is another one. I know that during this pandemic, a lot of the things that people may have enjoyed as far as group activities and including some socialization, maybe being on a bowling league or whatever, has been really limited. And of course, the high school, since the pool is not accessible, that has been kind of a struggle for some folks, okay? But remember that physical activity strengthens the heart muscle. It helps us maintain a healthy weight. It lowers risk for depression, and it protects against decline in cognitive function as you age. So not only is it something that we should do because we're being told to do that, but there are some great health benefits to being physically active. And it's not that you have to start in and just go 100% right off the bat. Start slow and build up over time if that is something that you feel you can't do right off the bat. Be creative. Maybe you need an accountability partner that will help you stay on track and encourage you. Think about if you, a couple people mentioned, or somebody mentioned keeping up with a toddler. Think of things that you can do and to include children. So maybe it's your own children or it's your grandchildren, but think about things that you can do to be physically active with them. I know a lot of people during the pandemic are having dance parties in their kitchens, like on Saturday evenings as they're preparing meals or whatever. And maybe it's every night that they're having a dance party. But think about ways that you can incorporate even an extra 10 minutes of physical activity in your day. There we go. My slide didn't want to advance. Okay, so let's talk for just a little bit. I'm probably going to spend the most time on this particular slide, but let's talk about eating healthy foods. And so one of the recommendations is to approach food consumption using the DASH eating plan. And this is the acronym for DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. And those include to eat vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, as well as fish, poultry, beans, nuts, vegetable oils, fat-free or low-fat dairy products. We want to limit foods that are high in saturated fat and sodium. We also want to limit sugar and other sweeteners, okay? So the bottom line is that we want to follow an eating pattern that is lower in saturated fat. And we also need to remember that our dietary intake should be our daily fat intake should be no more than 30% of your total calories for the day. Okay. That said, you do need some fat to keep healthy. I have, over the course of the years, I have known individuals who eat no fat. And there can be some health concerns with that as well, especially for women who are in their reproductive years. So remember that fat is good. We need some fat to keep us healthy. Fat helps protect our organs. It helps keep our bodies warm. It does help our bodies absorb some nutrients from the foods we eat. It provides energy and supports cell growth and hormone production. And some fatty acids are essential to our overall health. So many foods with fat also provide other nutrients that our bodies need. If when we think about reducing the amount of saturated fat in our diet, that should be no more than 10, or it should be less than 10% of our total calorie intake every day. So saturated fatty acids, less than 10% of our total intake per day. Saturated fats increase our blood cholesterol levels more than anything else we consume. And we need to remember that those saturated fats are the ones that are solid at room temperature. So can you think of a saturated fat that is solid at room temperature? You can either unmute or put it in the chat. I'll give you a hint. It's one that I really like to use when I bake because I think it gives me a better product, and that's butter. So butter, I grew up in a household where I grew up on a farm, and we had our own freezer meat. We did not butcher it ourselves. We sent it to a processing facility. But one of the products that we always received back was lard. And so I grew up in a household where it was very common to cook with lard, to definitely use lard in pie crust. And my mother baked we always had baked products in the home, usually home baked products in the house, cakes, pies, cookies, those kinds of things. I once had a college friend who came to visit, and she just wondered how my family could be as slim as we all were. And it's because we worked a lot. You know, we ate, but we also worked on the farm a lot. And anyway, so me adjusting my food preparation from what I learned growing up has been it's been something that has been intentional for me to do that, to eat a healthier diet. So when we think about, let me get back on track here. When we think about unsaturated fats, those are the ones that are usually liquid at room temperature. So vegetable oil, any of the oils that are in liquid form, those would be the unsaturated fats. And we need to overall limit the amount of cholesterol that we consume to 300 milligrams per day. So our cholesterol should be 300 milligrams per day. And I did include, in a few slides, I did include a nutrition label. So we'll take a look at that so that you know how to read that in a little while. So some ways that you can reduce cholesterol and reduce fat in your diet. Use canola or olive oil instead of butter or lard. Use low-fat cheeses instead of regular cheese. So look for those options in the cheese section at the grocery store and select ones that have like 2% cheese or reduced fat cheese. Limit the amount of salad dressings, sauces, and condiments that you use. And when you are deciding how to prepare foods, think about baking, steaming, grilling, roasting, or broiling foods rather than frying or sauteing them. When you're selecting meats at the meat counter, look for lean cuts of meat that have little visible fat, and then make sure you drain off the grease before serving them. You can also, when you're eating out, let's say you've decided to go out to eat. Isn't that a nice thing to think about in this pandemic? But we've all done a little bit of that, I think. Over the last almost year. But when you've chosen to eat fast food, instead of fries, order a salad. And then don't get the deluxe sandwich. Stick with a smaller sandwich. And it will lower your amount of fat that you're consuming and clearly the number of calories as well. Whether you're at home or you're dining out, start your meal with a salad or veggies, fresh veggies as an appetizer. And then you'll be sure to have something healthy first. You'll fill up with some healthy foods that have some good fiber and nutrients before then you eat the heavier part of your meal. So it's really important to eat more fiber. And when we think about the benefits of fiber, we know that helps us to lower cholesterol levels. It helps us have a healthier weight, maintain our healthier weight. Eating fiber helps us reduce our risk for diabetes. It reduces our possibility of being constipated, and it also provides a feeling of fullness. So that goes back to that recommendation of starting your meal with a salad or maybe some veggies as an appetizer, because that fiber will help you feel fuller and you won't feel like you need to eat as much. Okay. Fiber-rich foods. So any of the foods that the veggies, the fruits, the whole grains, all of those, and the beans, Those may help lower cholesterol, blood cholesterol levels. The soluble fiber helps take away cholesterol before it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. So if we eat a lot of foods that have fiber, we're helping remove that cholesterol from our bloodstream. So sources of fiber include whole fruits are better than drinking fruit juices. The goal is that you should replace some of the grains that you eat with whole grain products. So maybe changing up your bread or your pasta choices, even rice. So replace those with whole grain products. Snack on raw veggies instead of chips or crackers. And substitute beans or legumes for meat in chilies and soups. Just a few ways that you can increase your fiber. Sodium, we know, when we talk about limiting the amount of sodium that we consume, we know that that causes an increase in our blood pressure. And processed foods account for the majority of the sodium that we consume. Our recommended intake is less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium daily. So how can you flavor foods instead of using salt? What do you do to flavor foods instead of salt? It's pretty easy just to pick up that salt shaker, isn't it? Either by the stove or at the table. Do you use herbs and spices? Okay, those are really great. You can either use fresh or dried herbs. Think about using onions, garlic, lemons to add flavor. Okay, avoid using seasonings that contain the word salt. So garlic salt, onion salt. Use powder seasoning instead. So onion powder or garlic powder instead of the salt. Reduce the number of frozen dinners, pizzas, canned soups, and salad dressings that you consume. Those are all processed foods. Those are really easy go-to meals, right? Easy to put a meal on the table. So instead of processed deli meats, choose fresh poultry and meat instead. And instead of canned vegetables that likely have salt in them, unless the label says no salt added, the package says no salt added, but you can choose that option to reduce the amount of sodium. You may also choose fresh or frozen vegetables to reduce the amount of sodium. Now, if you do buy canned, and I understand that when you select the no salt added version or variety of those canned vegetables, that does cost more money. I understand that. One of the things you can do if to help is to rinse that can of, let's say, corn, pour it into a colander and then rinse it off before you prepare it. And you will be able to rinse away some of the sodium that is included in that, okay? All right, so let's go on to the next slide, and we're gonna talk about a healthy weight. It's important to really have a goal for a healthy weight. It's really hard on our hearts when we are overweight. It increases our risk of possibly having heart disease, a stroke, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and diabetes. So it's important for us to choose heart-healthy foods and to get regular physical activity to achieve and maintain a healthy weight. One of the things I wanted to mention in relation to this slide is a lot of times you'll hear the term BMI or body mass index. And when this is just it's a formula, basically, it's your ratio. And how it's interpreted for adults is anyone who has a BMI of 25 or more is considered overweight or obese. The healthy range for body mass index is anywhere from 18.5 to 24.9. Okay, so I am not a healthcare provider. And so I would really encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about body mass index, have a conversation with your healthcare provider so that together the two of you can determine a plan that is best for you and your situation. So reducing stress and improving sleep, that's the next suggestion that we have for your healthy heart. Who's stress-free? Ashley, are you? No, she's shaking her head no. You have children and a full-time job and a household to run and gosh, all sorts of obligations, right? Yes. And me talking about it makes her more stressed. So I'll stop there, okay? But think about that stress can contribute to high blood pressure as well as other heart risks. And when we think about managing our stress, we can think about, first of all, knowing some tips how we can reduce our stress. The very first and most important thing, I think, is to know what your triggers are. You know when something happens that immediately it's your trigger and your stress level goes up, right? Okay. Another great reduction tip when it comes to stress is to have a support system. Have somebody that you can call to vent to, that you can maybe lean on for some support. Maybe when the tough gets going and you have so much on your plate, you have someone you can call to ask for help. Whether it's, taking care of your kids for a couple of hours so that you can get the house clean, or it is just, meeting for a glass of iced tea so that you can talk about your day or whatever. Another really important tip when we're talking about stress reduction is learning to say no. And that's one thing that's been really, really hard for me over my career and my life is I don't want to let anyone down. And so it's really hard for me to say no. We've already talked about this next one, but eating healthy foods. So if we fuel our bodies with good foods, that can help us feel better overall. Physical activity can do a lot for us when it comes to stress reduction. That 30 minutes that you take for yourself to add some physical activity or to get that in, whether it's walking, biking, and it could be by yourself or it could be a family activity. I know families who, every day after work, they take a walk together. They have a dog, the dog needs to be walked, the kids get on their bikes, and mom, dad, and kids and dog go for a walk. And you get all of that over in one fell swoop, right? And then the last stress reduction tip is to ask for help when you need it, okay? And maybe practicing meditation is your thing. Maybe adding more physical activity or being physically active is your thing. Relaxation therapy is something else that you might try if that is something that that might work for you. Talking with someone you can trust. Everyone needs to have that confidant, that person that they know when the phone rings, okay, I'm going to put everything aside because this person needs to talk to me. I know I have that person, and I know I'm that person for other folks as well. Encourage others to take steps. Find someone like that confidant and you can encourage each other to take steps to lower your stress, and then also following healthy sleep habits. Have a regular bedtime. Do you have a regular bedtime, or is it all over the place? Okay. Do you eat late at night? Is supper really late, or do you snack after supper? Okay. But we know that if we can get a good night's rest, or improve our quality of sleep, then we can reduce our risk of high blood pressure. We can reduce the risk of heart disease and other medical conditions. We need to aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. We know that if we can reduce our stress, there are a lot of benefits to that as well. We can have an improved feeling of well-being. Our memory and cognition will improve. We'll have more energy throughout the day. We'll have a more restful sleep at night. We will feel more appreciation and kindness, and we won't be as irritable or impatient throughout our day. Okay. So, smoking, we always have to include, when we're talking about heart health, we always have to include the risks of smoking for those who choose to still do so. And if we remember back, we are actually have a pretty high percentage. Over a fourth of the population in Indiana does currently smoke, according to the statistics I shared with you earlier. We know that the chemicals that are in tobacco smoke harm the heart and blood vessels in so many ways. And we know that quitting is hard, but a lot of other people have succeeded, and you just have to persevere and push through on that. Set a goal for yourself and share it with folks who are close to you so that they can help hold you accountable, and then ask friends and family members to support you during that time. Okay. So quitting smoking is another really a great suggestion for a healthy heart. It's really important that you take accountability for your numbers. Okay. So know what your numbers are, know what your numbers should be after you've had that conversation with your healthcare provider, okay? But maybe what you do is you track your physical activity by, maybe you wear a fitness app, or you use a fitness app. You wear a tracker, you use a fitness app on your phone. You have a way to track it. If you're not that techie, that's okay. Write it on your calendar, or keep a log in whatever method works best for you. But track your physical activity, monitor your blood pressure, and also keep track of your cholesterol numbers. Know what they are from one blood test to the next, so that you can tell if you're improving or if you need to do better. And then, like I mentioned earlier already, the importance of having conversations with your healthcare providers and knowing what goals they have for you, and also what goals you have for yourself. And on this slide, I did include the BMI information. So that's another number that you need to know for yourself as well. Okay. So remember, for optimal heart health, the BMI of 25 or less is the best. Okay. All right. So I wanted to share a little bit of information. I ran across this in another presentation, and I thought, you know what? We haven't probably eaten out as much as we'd all like to over the course of the last year. But if you're like our household, you have maybe done a little bit of takeout. to support local businesses as well, because that's really important if you're able to do that. So regardless of your situation with eating out, and maybe it's not going to a restaurant, but maybe it's family gatherings and so on, where everybody pitches in a meal and so on. But typically when we think about restaurants, we think about the servings from those restaurants are often very large portions. Okay. Much larger than what we probably would eat if we were at home. And it's not uncommon for food, particularly from fast food restaurants, to be high in sodium and fat. So look at the menu. A lot of restaurants anymore are providing information about heart healthy options on their menus. But if you don't, you don't see that on the menu, take a minute to ask your server which options are healthier if you're having problems figuring that out on your own. Choose either a fresh garden salad or some cooked vegetables as side options rather than a fried side option like French fries or something like that. So now with that said, the cooked vegetables should not be, should have a limited sauce on them. And what I'm thinking there is like butter or cheese sauce or something like that, okay? So you have to be careful with that. So the fresher the vegetable, the better it is, okay? For those portions, and you probably know when you're going to get those, ask for a to-go box to be brought to the table so that it's there when your meal arrives at the table, and just go ahead and put half of that, what you're served, into the to-go box before you begin to eat. And then you won't overindulge at that meal, okay? Ask for your salad dressings or any sauces that you would order to be on the side, to be brought to the table on the side so that you can control how much salad dressing or sauce you consume. And then also look for those low-fat options that a lot of restaurants have anymore. Instead of red meats, choose lean options like fish or poultry. Obviously, when we're talking about poultry, especially when you're, and I'm going to flip back to the DASH eating plan, but you want to make sure when you're preparing poultry at home, you remove the skin, okay, before you prepare it. Try really hard not to add additional salt to those foods when you're eating out. And then again, like I said earlier, look for any light or healthy options when you are exploring the menu. Okay, so I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about reading a nutrition label. So all packaged foods are required to have this reading or this nutrition label on it. And when we look at nutrition facts, the very first box in blue up near the top in the left-hand column, right under the words nutrition facts, that's how many serving sizes are included in the package. And for this particular product, we know that there are that it's a 4-ounce serving size, okay? And we also know that there are intended to be 4 servings in this container. Okay, 4 servings in this container, and each serving is 4 ounces. So that means that this is a 16-ounce package or a 1-pound package. Okay. So when we talk about, when we then start looking at all of the additional information under that first dark black line, thick black line, that information is information for each serving, okay? So if you eat more than one serving, then you're getting more calories or more nutrients, depending on how much you eat, okay? So we know in this, for this particular food product, the total fat equals 14 grams, okay? And that's in the right-hand column on that box, you can see that the percent of daily value is, that's 22% of what we should be consuming is that 14 grams in that one serving, 4 ounces, okay? We know that saturated fats for this one serving is 3.5 grams and trans fats is 2.5 grams, okay? So we should really look for foods that have less than 5 grams of total fat per serving. Does this food product meet that guideline? No, it does not. It does not. No, it's 9 grams over, in fact, okay? Almost triple what we should be having, right? Okay. Let's look, even though the cholesterol is doesn't have a blue box around it, 120 milligrams of cholesterol. That's 40% of our total cholesterol for the day, okay? Sodium, 540 milligrams. Again, over 25% of our daily intake, okay? We really need to look at selecting foods with 140 milligrams or less. If we have foods that have 300 milligrams or more of sodium, this product would not be part of a healthy eating plan, okay? All right, so we want to go back up to the saturated fat and trans fat. So we want to choose foods with less than 3 grams per serving of saturated fat. So this does not meet that guideline. And little to no trans fat. So again, this has 2.5 grams. That's not little to no. That's more, okay? And then you'll see though that this does have 24 grams of protein. So if you're looking for a high protein food, this would be something higher in protein, but none of the other pieces really add up, okay? And then when we look at total carbs, this is 13 grams of carbs, 1 gram of dietary fiber, and 0 sugars. And then it does have, it gives us, 2% vitamin A, 2% vitamin C, 2% calcium, and it looks like 6% iron, okay? So do you have any questions about reading a nutrition label? Do you have, any questions about reading a nutrition label? Okay, all right. Well, think about that. If you have any, we can come back to that. So what can you do? What's one thing that you can take away from today's program and put into action as a SMART goal? And when we think about SMART goals, we know that those are specific. It's not just be healthier. You need to have something more specific than that. Maybe it's, for me, I admit it, I need to work on my physical activity. okay? It needs to be measurable. When am I going to start doing this? Okay, how much every day? Is it attainable? You need to ask yourself, because like all of our goals, if it's not attainable, we're probably not going to reach it, right? Is it realistic? And is it timely? Okay. Okay. All right. Good. New, healthier recipes. Okay, perfect. So I do have my next slide. Provides you with a few resources that I have run across that have some really great resources included in them. The first is the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. The next one is the American Heart Association. And then the third is My Plate and Dietary Guidelines. And the new dietary guidelines just came out not too long ago. And so you can find all of that there. The really nice thing about myplate.gov is that you can put in all of your specific information and you can customize your healthy eating plan right there in that resource. And I think that is really great when we're looking at how we can improve and make changes and set goals. Okay. All right. So someone mentioned healthier recipes in the chat. And one of the resources that, and I don't have it pulled up, so I can't share it with you, but I left copies at the library. It's called, it's not going to show up. It's not going to show up on my screen. I'm sorry, because of my background I'm using. It's called Altering Recipes for Better Health. Oh, thank you, Ashley. Altering Recipes for Better Health. It is a Purdue Extension publication. And it provides you, so if you have your own favorite recipes and you know that maybe they're not the most heart healthy, it provides you suggestions for reducing total fat and calories, reducing sodium, reducing sugar, and increasing fiber. So, for example, let's just go with the very first one under decreasing total fat and or calories. Instead of using butter, margarine, oil, shortening, or solid fat in general cooking, use 1/4 less liquid oil or solid fat called for in the recipe. If the recipe calls for 1 cup, use 3/4 of a cup. If the recipe uses 1/4 cup shortening, use 3 tablespoons of oil. Okay. Instead of using full fat cream cheese, try the low fat or non-fat cream cheese or low fat cottage cheese that's pureed until smooth. Okay. Instead of eggs, use egg whites. Usually you're going to use 2 egg whites for every egg or 1/4 cup of the egg substitute. Okay. So that is one that, as I was putting this together, I'm like, we all have our favorite recipes that we really like and enjoy, but finding ways to make them healthier is something that that we can all strive to do better. And when we actually, I put together a program over the holidays, and one of the suggestions in that was to not maybe alter all of your dishes. Let's say, well, let's just choose holiday dishes. Okay, so you have your favorites for certain holidays. Don't necessarily alter all of them, but choose some of them to make healthier versions of. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And we can talk about that in more length if we need to. Okay. So I do have, I want to thank you for being with us today. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I need to pull up a couple of, and I hope our folks joining us can click on links in the chat, because I would like to put in the chat the okay, this link that I just shared is the link to our Purdue Extension website. And I have asked for the resources that Ashley has at the library. If you would like to access those online, those will be available on our Purdue Extension website. So the Altering Recipes for Better Health will be on there. I also found a couple of other pieces to share. One is from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute that I mentioned earlier as a resource, and it is called Self-Care Tips for Heart Health. Okay, so self-care tips for heart health. And then I selected a couple from the American Heart Association. One is called Smart Snacking, and the other one is 10 Healthy Cooking Tips. So when you're talking about healthier recipes, some of the 10 healthy cooking tips really go right along with that, and can really be incorporated into that. Actually, if you enjoy muffins, I love a really good muffin. And I found a muffin recipe on, I am sure it was the American Heart Association website about a year ago. And it has, excuse me, it has dates in it. And it is excellent. It's a very heart healthy muffin recipe. And if you would be interested in that, I think I have everyone's email address. If I don't, you can email me. I can put my email in the chat. Feel free to email me, and you can, and I will be happy to find that link and share it with you. I'm pretty sure that I used it for a different program that, because of the pandemic, I'm not offering this year, but I'm pretty sure I would have that in my digital files and I can email it to you. But it's really, if you like dates, it is an excellent muffin recipe. And I would think you probably could even substitute raisins in that muffin recipe as well. So I do have one more thing I would like to share. And we always appreciate when we can get feedback on our programming. And one of the things that I am required to do is provide evaluations for and collect input on my programming. And I use this tool. It's a tool that's provided by Purdue University Extension, Health and Human Sciences, specifically the area that I work in. And so if you wouldn't mind to take a couple of minutes and click on that last link that I provided, it's the surveythis.info link. If you could please complete that survey, and then that will be deposited directly into my survey bank. I would appreciate that. So I use the information from these to report back if people learned things from my programs. If you provide additional comments, I would take those into consideration as I'm looking for additional programs to offer. And if you have any additional things you'd like to learn about, you can include that as well, or email me.